Hi YouTube. This is a yoga sequence that I use as a cool down from lifting weights, or I use it as a warm-up before beginning a larger asana practice. And every now and then it's a standalone on the days where I'm doing the bare minimum. So I'm going to speak as I go through this sequence, but if I weren't speaking, I could do this whole sequence in 5 minutes or less, and it targets many major muscle groups and joint complexes. Hard to get them all, but this does a decent job. So it begins on your back, or supine, with a unsupported Supta Padangusthasana. So I'm bending my hip to maximize the hip flexion without stretching the hamstring yet, and then I'm going to do a sit-up by reaching my shoulders forward and sitting upwards. This activates my core. From there, I'll point the foot to take the sciatic nerve stretch out. Pulling the toes back stretches the sciatic nerve. Pointing the foot does not. And this stretches the hamstring nicely. I lower down somewhat, and I turn my thigh outwards. It's external rotation. And then I take the leg to the side. The external rotation creates a bandha in the hip and makes this leg much more akin to the front leg of a triangle pose. I'm still sitting up slightly, so the center of my abdomen is engaged, the six-pack muscle. I'm going to bend my knee, and I take the knee to the floor. This might look like a half-happy baby, but what I'm doing is I'm again maximizing the hip flexion without stretching the hamstring yet, and then as I straighten the knee, I get a little bit deeper of a stretch through the hamstring and the groin. I'm trying to ground this hip down. If I run out of room, I can move this other leg towards the leg which is stretching, borrow a little space, and then try to take that leg backwards. Come back through the middle. Because this leg is in such deep external rotation already, I can take the leg into a half lotus, and then I try to extend the hip. So I'm going to try to bring the back of my thigh and knee towards the floor. And that opens the front of the hip and strengthens the buttocks. Sometimes I'll bounce here a few times. I don't generally bounce in shapes, but with this, it tends to help me. I'm tight in this area. The hip extension with Padmasana, with Lotus, has always been hard for me. I bring the leg back to center. I sit upwards, touch on the hamstring again. I'm going to lower down. Then I'm going to shift my hips. This is my right leg in the air. I'm going to shift my hips to the right and create a spinal twist. The hip shift allows my neck and my sacrum, the base of the spine, to align. I'll stretch my neck here by moving the back of my head to the right and looking left. And then I move the back of my head to the left and I look right. Sometimes I do that a few times in a fluid motion, making kind of a figure 8 or Stevie Wonder pattern. Lifting the neck in either of these positions would strengthen the front neck muscles, the SCM. But that's more intense. If your neck is sensitive or potentially injured, I'd avoid lifting the head there. Coming back through center, I have to bring my hips to center. I again bring the thigh towards the chest, the hip flexion, lengthen the hamstring, maybe stretch the sciatic nerve a little bit through dorsiflexion of the foot. Then I come down. I repeat that on the second side. Hip flexion, trying to ground through the opposite hip, as though this leg is pressing into the floor, hip extension. Reach the shoulders forward, sit up. Point the foot as I straighten the knee. This side feels tighter today. Maybe pull the toes back. I feel that immediately in the foot and heel, sciatic nerve. Lower down somewhat. turn the thigh outwards, external rotation, and then I take it to the side. You can see this hip wanted to lift a little bit, and that's highlighting some of the tension on this side. Again, trying to stay sitting up, abdomen is firm, but soft on the sides. I deepen the hip flexion, bringing the knee to the floor. I'm going to preemptively borrow a little space by moving my right leg to the left. And then I'll straighten this left leg again. I'm going to point the foot on the left to try to release the sciatic nerve to make this groin and hamstring stretch less intense because this side feels tighter today. I pulled the toes back into dorsiflexion, grounding the hip, moved my right leg back in line, settling nicely. Accentuate the external rotation, bring this leg into a half lotus. Now I'm trying to press this left thigh and knee towards the floor, which is a hip extension. If the floor wasn't beneath me, I could imagine that the leg was going beyond my midline here. I'll bounce. Hip flexion, sit up, hamstring stretch, pull the toes back, maybe point and flex a few times. This leg feels like it's released nicely. Lower down, I'm going to offset my hips to the left, and then bring my left leg to the right. Again, offsetting the hips aligns the pelvis, sacrum, with the neck. So head in line with tail. Less intense on the neck is moving the back of the head to the left and looking right towards my left leg. More intense is to bring the back of the head to the right and look left. I'll again fluidly, a few times, alternate this pattern, imagining I'm drawing a figure 8 with my chin, and then at the end, head is to the left, looking right. I'll lift the head. It strengthens the muscles at the front of the neck, the sternocleidomastoid, SCM. Back of the head to the right, looking left, much more intense. Lift the head, SCM strengthening. Coming back through center, resetting my hips. Again, maximizing the hip flexion. So I'm bringing the thigh towards the abdomen, and then I bring the abdomen towards the thigh, or chest towards the thigh. Point the foot, lengthen the hamstring, dorsiflex to tone the sciatic nerve. Reset my body. This is a 4th series posture, leaning onto my side. I'm going to turn this thigh out. This is my left thigh. So again, this thigh is in external rotation, and then I bring it up. You can take hold of the toe. If that's out of reach, you just hold the thigh, the calf. I like to hold the heel. It's easy to push the buttock bone into the heel, and then pull the heel back with your arm. Again, this is a lot like a triangle pose. Second side. The trick to this posture is to imagine that you're falling onto the front of your foot. So my left foot, I'm putting a lot of my weight on the pinky toe edge there. Right thigh turns out. Open the groin. Again, holding the hamstring, the calf muscle, the big toe, or the heel. I can push my buttock bone where the hamstrings originate into my heel, and then pull back with my arm. And I feel that just let me externally rotate more. We have a visitor, and he's stolen my mat. I'm gonna let this leg down. Let's see if I can roll. Hey, buddy. From here, I switch to my belly, which is called prone. Lift one more weight for the day. Excuse me. Right here. Okay, down. Good boy. Switching to my belly. And I do a Shalabhasana sequence. So on my back, I was strengthening my core and lengthening my hamstrings. Here, I'm going to strengthen my back, which is a counter action for what I just did with my core. And I'm going to engage my hip extensors, the buttocks and hamstring mostly, and that will act as a counter to all the hip flexion I just did. So this is an asymmetrical Shalabhasana to start. I press my buttock bones towards my heels. I lift the head, I lift the chest. I lift my right leg and my right arm. Left side is pressing into the floor. Arm goes out to the side like a bird wing with the palm facing the floor. And then I reach the arm forward and the palm is facing across my body. From here I can bend my right knee and my right arm, and I can try to lift the elbow. I engage my bicep muscle. Everything can straighten. I go back the way I came. Quick moment of rest. It can be nice to turn the head. I make sure my big toes are touching so that my legs don't wander to the right or left. Buttock bones towards the heels, lift the head, lift the chest. Left leg up, right leg presses down. Left arm. That bird wing position, palm faces down. Arm overhead, palm faces across the body. I can bend the knee, I can bend the elbow, and then I can draw the elbow towards my midline and lift it up. I engage the bicep. I let the limb straighten. I come back to center. I rest a moment, turn my head to the side. This is also asymmetrical, but it's opposite limbs. So buttock bones towards the heel, lift the head, lift the chest, right leg lifts, left arm lifts. Bird wing, overhead, bend the knee, bend the elbow, elbow draws in, and lifts up. Straighten the limbs, go back the way I came. Second side, left leg and right arm are lifted. Bird wing, palm facing down, arm overhead. Bend the knee, bend the elbow, elbow draws in and up. I engage the bicep. Come back to center. Rest a moment as needed. Laying on your belly can be nice. If you breathe into the belly, the floor provides resistance. And so it brings more awareness to the belly breath. And in theory, presses some of that intra-abdominal pressure instead of the belly protruding further outwards back into the body to massage the spine and abdominal muscles. Abdominal organs and probably muscles. This time the legs stay down and I incorporate a little bit more with the shoulders. Buttock bones towards the heel, head up, chest up. I interlace the hands. You see that lifted me a little higher. Right now my palms are facing one another. I rotate my shoulders. Now the palms are facing outwards. I move each finger one groove, so the opposite thumb is closest to my buttocks. Change the interlace again. Bird wings, arms overhead. Here I'm going to press my hands into the floor and I'm going to pull a little bit to lengthen my upper back more. Now I'm going to press the elbows into the floor, keeping that pull, I engage the biceps and I rotate at the forearm. This is a difficult position for the bicep to engage in. But what it does is that now that my forearms have rotated, if I take the arms behind the head, they end up in the right place. Feet are pressing into the floor as though I was in upward facing dog. Arms can go overhead. Bird wings behind, and I rest. A few belly breaths. This time everything will lift. Buttock bones towards the heels. Head, chest, legs, big toes are touching. Arms, interlace. Reverse the grip. Move each finger one groove. Flip again, palms face back. Bird wings. Overhead. Gentle pull. Continue pulling with the elbows. Pronate at the forearm, or at the elbow. Engage the biceps. This is kind of a radial nerve lengthening, especially if the elbow were to be straight. Hands behind the head. Knees can bend. This is like a bow pose, unsupported bow. Extend the limbs. Big toes are still touching. Come down. I do a frog pose. Buttock bones towards the heels. This is continuing in a bit of the progression of second series Ashtanga. They do Shalabhasana and then Bakasana. So locust, which I did before, and then frog, which I'm about to do. Lifting up, bend the knees, I take hold of the inner foot and ankle, and I rotate at the shoulder. Tricky movement if you've never done it. And a frog. Some people really press the feet towards the floor. I don't know if there's much benefit in it. This is just nice. Stretches the knee, stretches the quads. I'm going to switch to a bow pose. So I lift. I'm pressing back with the legs. That lifts my chest more. Sometimes I shift the weight forward again. Let my body weight rest on the abdomen. I could touch the big toes together. I feel like there's a lot of benefit in being back here though with the thighs on the ground. You can see what feels better, pulling the toes back or pointing them. I let go, press the feet into the floor, press the arms into the floor. It's an up dog, push my hips forward, expand the belly, chest, look up. I'll drop my knees to the floor so I can reverse the shape of my back easily. This engages my abdomen, the six-pack muscle, and rounds the spine. I flip my toes, or I flip onto my toes. Buttock bones towards the heels, kind of a child's pose of sorts. And then if I straighten the knees here, I end up in a bit of a downward facing dog. I can walk forward slightly, avoiding the real dog. I like to look forward beyond my hands and get my chest to lift. It's common for people to sink their chest into the floor, and especially if I lengthen my stance, flare at the ribs. There's a time and a place for that, but it's not my preference, especially right now that I'm trying to use downward facing dog to forward fold or flex my spine, bring the spine into flexion, the opposite of all the back bends I just did. I do a little spinal movements here. Twisting down dog. I can feel that the abdomen is firm. that the side I'm twisting to is soft. So the obliques are relaxed, but the six-pack and opposing side of the abdomen was firm. Reaching. I'm reaching to my right. Right side of the abdomen is soft. Center is firm. Left side is firm. I do a side plank or a side downward facing dog. And then this is just like how I started the practice. I can turn the thigh out and end up in a Vashisthasana or Vishwamitrasana. Systems sometimes have different names for that pose. I'm trying to stay tall in my hip here so that I strengthen my shoulder more. Holding the toe. It is possible to hold the heel in that as well, but I don't feel open enough today to go there. Do a down dog. Little hop forward. Bend the knees. Uttanasana. I'm maintaining contact of my abdomen and rib cage with my thighs. It's possible to push the shoulders that way, the armpits that way, and then take the elbows out to the sides. Interesting bandha action, getting the top and bottom of the armpit and shoulder to engage. I'll bend the knees a little. And I'll lengthen the spine, just like I did in Shalabhasana. Right? If my thighs were the floor, I can lift the head and chest. And I reach behind the back, I feel that engages my back muscles. Then if I straighten the legs, I end up in a true flat back. Might bend the knees a little bit more, engage the back muscles, and see if I can maintain it with my fingertips on the floor. Sometimes I reach behind my back and check, and I don't feel any bumps in the spine. Bend the knees again. Uttanasana. Armpits pushing towards the dog. Elbows pushing towards my ears. Bend the knees deeply. That allows me to lift my torso up, and I end up in a chair pose. You can take the arms forward and up. Sometimes in chair, I like to come on with the balls of the feet. And it ends you in Tadasana. From here, I'll do a gentle inversion practice. The forward folding I did at the end started to prepare me for being upside down, along with the down dog. And after the inversions, take a little Shavasana. So, hope that was useful. Give it a try. Thank you.